Welcome back to the OPEX podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by Patrick McKeown from the Buteyko Clinic and OxygenAdvantage.com. On this episode, Patrick and I discuss everything to do with breathing. Enjoy. All right, Patrick, thank you so much for making time to come and speak with me today. I really appreciate it. Just for any of the listeners who aren't familiar with who you are, listen in the background, my man.
Sure. I'm involved with breathing and have been for about almost 20 years. I started off traditionally it was with asthma, then with sleep problems, anxiety, and more recently then with sports performance. So I'm based in the west coast of Ireland. I'm originally from Dunboyne, it's in County Meath, and most of my work is international. So I'm not that very well known in Ireland, but my books have been published in about 14 languages, and about 90% of my work is outside of Ireland.
It's gas, isn't it? It's like the old saying, if you want to be Mike Boyle, a mentor of mine, he's like, you want to be an expert, he's like, get a PowerPoint and go about 100 miles away from your house.
That's what happened with me anyway. So yeah.
You're never accepted as a prophet in your own land, as they say. Listen, I've watched your TED Talk. I've listened to some of your other podcasts. I recently listened to the one that you've done with the two boys from the Mind Muscle Project, Lachlan and Raf. That was a very good interview. And I actually didn't know your original background is in economics. Is that what you said it was? Business economics?
Yeah, that was my original. So I went to today, but I had no idea. It's like probably everybody else when you're in school and you're doing your leaving cert and you're supposed to know what you want to do for the rest of your life. So I felt inclined towards business, but at the same time I had health issues. Now, if I was to make a choice of the degree that I'd be doing, it would have been down the route of physiotherapy, or at least incorporating. Like I found a perfect job for me, but I found it totally by accident. And I have to say that when you find a job that suits you, you have no problem keeping up to date with everything. It's almost that it's a hobby. Stress levels are greatly reduced. And also it's rewarding in every way, but most people unfortunately don't find the perfect job, and maybe, they're not putting out the question, or maybe just life guides us. And we have to be open to what messages we are getting.
Yes, because all that mouth breathing has them not thinking right. That's why. Cloudy brain and all that.
That was happening to me for 20 years. And it has a massive effect. Breathing through an open mouth has a huge effect.
Well, we're going to get into all that now. So, take us on the background story, sort of your hero's journey, as people are saying nowadays, because it's very interesting. I know you said that in previous interviews you've done, you were sickly, you had asthma, you were waking up tired all the time, you couldn't concentrate, and then you were going back and forth to doctors, and sure, God bless them, they're just brainwashed into the conventional model and they don't know any better. So they're just handing out pharmaceutical drugs and agents to cover shit up. And then eventually you were like, right, that's it. I'm taking this into my own hands. And you came across some breathing techniques and you said you tried it. And then you were like within a few days, you were saying 50 to 70% better. Even though I do want to ask, how were you gauging it was 50 to 7% better? What were you
Because I knew for years how many puffs of Ventolin I was taking every day.
I was
taking it between 10 and 15 puffs a day. So within about 2 to 3 days, it was down to about 2 to 3. Now, in addition to Ventolin, I wasn't just taking Ventolin, I was taking Unifilin. I was from time to time taking a medication called Oxys. And then inhale steroids from time to time. But the one thing that I will say is, in this country, we have 500,000 people with asthma.
That's
children and adults. And if you have asthma, you don't just have asthma. You're tired as well. I was constantly tired. And the main reason is because if the lungs are congested or inflamed, the nose gets stuffy. And if the nose is stuffy, we breathe through an open mouth. And when we breathe through an open mouth, we are twice as likely to have sleep problems. So people with asthma are more likely to snore, more likely to have obstructive sleep apnea, and also as asthma condition increases, so does sleep disorder breathing. But it's not just about asthma. Look at up to 50% of kids who are going around with an open mouth, and very few people are saying to these kids, breathe through their noses. I had an operation on my nose in 1994, my turbinate reduction surgery, but I was never told to breathe through it afterwards.
Mm.
So it was a total waste of time. It was actually an article in the Irish Times or Irish Independent that I read about the importance of nasal breathing. So I read more in that article. It changed my life than 20 years visiting healthcare professionals. And this is not a knock on the doctors that I was visiting.
Yeah.
This is just the way it is, you know. This is the system. And the entire healthcare system is really about, you know, taking responsibility of health away from the patient. Because if the patient has a condition, well, it's not their problem, you know, that kind of way. It's not about addressing the lifestyle that may be contributing to the condition, but it's about taking a pill to resolve the condition as opposed to getting to the root of it.
Yeah, well, it's not really a healthcare system. It's more of a disease management system, you know. Like a true healthcare system will be a health prevention system, really, you know. But listen, again, I'm not one of these people that are like, oh, everyone in conventional medicine is evil and big pharma are gonna, you know, they're the worst thing in the world. Listen, there's a time and place for everything, but again, you know, for the most part, like when it comes to chronic degenerative diseases, like conventional medicine has their fucking head in the sand, like. But at the same time, like, there is guys out there who are quote unquote saying they're functional medicine doctors, and they're just doing the same though with like supplements. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, instead of taking drugs, like supplements, and they're just as blind, some of them as well. So it's about, you know, integration, taking the best of both worlds. It's about empowering people to take responsibilities for their own life and their own health.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah.
So tell us more about your work. So you, like, just from looking at your website, man, you are on the road all the time, whether it's in Ireland or the world. Like, even when we were trying to hook this podcast up, you were away, you were traveling, and you seem to be a man on a mission. So, like, I suppose, what is your mission? You know, is it really just like shut your mouth, breathe through your nose, and your life will improve type kind of mission?
There's a few aspects to it. It's ultimately the base is about nasal breathing, but it's not just about that.
Yeah.
It's about optimizing breathing patterns to increase oxygen delivery to the cells, but also open up the airways. I'll explain it this way. If you have poor breathing, and poor breathing would be breathing through an open mouth, or excessive movement from the upper chest, or noticeable breathing, or irregular breathing, that in turn can affect airways depending on genetic predisposition, but it can also cause blood vessels to constrict, because the more air we breathe, the more our blood vessels constrict. If I said to you, Robbie, if I said, take 10 or 15 big breaths, you would start taking big breaths in and out, whether it was through your mouth or through your nose, you can feel lightheaded. So it's very easy to cause our blood vessels to constrict by increasing the amount of air that we breathe. But how about somebody who's going around with their mouth open all day, breathing harder than what they should do? 100,000 miles of blood vessels in the human body, those blood vessels can be constricted as a result of their breathing. So I look at somebody, they come into me, I look at their breathing, whether they're a person of 85 years of age, a young child of 5 years of age, or an elite athlete. I look at their breathing, I assess it, and I give them tools about how to change their breathing patterns for the better. So that's one aspect to it. With that, then, we can improve energy levels, we can improve focus, we can certainly improve asthma. We've 20 clinical trials on that. A few of them I've been directly published in. And sleep is a big one, but also then it's athletic performance, because let's look at Conor McGregor as a primary example. If you watch him in press conferences, look at his breathing. He's breathing too fast. He's breathing upper chest. And when I look at an athlete like that, not just Conor McGregor, but any athlete, if they come into me breathing like that, the one thing I'm going to say to you is that you have excessive breathlessness during physical exercise. Because if you're breathing hard at rest, you are going to breathe hard during physical exercise. You can do all of the physical training in the world. It's not going to change your breathing patterns. So an athlete with poor breathing patterns will have premature fatigue, and they'll have excessive breathlessness, and also they're not getting enough oxygen to their working muscles. So we change that. So another aspect then is looking at breath holding. So we do breath hold exercises to purposely lower the blood oxygen saturation. And this disturbs the blood acid base. And this basically, we're forcing the body to make adaptations to increase buffering capacity. In other words, that we can make adaptations in the body to delay the onset of lactic acid and fatigue. So we're looking to improve aerobic capacity, and we're also looking to improve anaerobic capacity. And, you know, whether it's a young kid coming in or whether it's an elite Olympic athlete, it doesn't matter. It's the same process.
And is the reason why you're getting that sort of vagal constriction because mouth breathing is a sympathetic input rather than, you know...
Yeah, it could be part of that.
I mean, sorry, mouth breathing. Did I say that? Sorry, mouth breathing is sympathetic input, whereas nasal breathing is more parasympathetic, isn't it?
We would say definitely that if you're breathing through an open mouth, you're activating a fight or flight response. Yeah. You know, if you look down at your chest, Robbie, and take a breath through your mouth, you'll see that your mouth is directly targeting the chest, upper chest muscles. Nasal breathing is more linked with the diaphragm. Now, if you look at the human lungs, the greatest concentration of blood is in the lower lobes of the lungs. So when we breathe through the nose, we tend to breathe slower but deeper. So we're taking the air from the upper lobes down into the lower regions of the lungs. But also when we breathe through a nose, we pick up a gas called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide redistributes the blood from the lower part of the lungs to the upper. So gas exchange improves. So the oxygen uptake in the blood is between 5 to 15% higher with nasal breathing than with mouth breathing. Let's look at the nasal cavity, you know, simple diagram. If you put your tongue up into the roof of the mouth, so put your tongue into the roof of the mouth and drag your tongue along the roof of the mouth like this. So if you drag your tongue along the roof of the mouth is the floor of the nose. So now you have an idea of the extent of the nasal cavity. So your nose is performing 30 functions in the human body. But the one thing that I'll always come back to is, if you're breathing through an open mouth, if you're waking up with a dry mouth in the morning, you're waking up feeling tired. And if your sleep is not right, the rest of the day is affected. And I'll give you an example. Going through the whole Leaving Cert, which is an absolute joke, to be honest with you, from my own perspective. I drove myself through getting a good education. Did my Leaving Cert in 1991, didn't get the points that I wanted for TCD, repeated it again in 1992. But my main problem was concentration. So all the way through secondary school, I was a kid that had very disrupted sleep. I was snoring heavily. I was stopping breathing during sleep. I was waking up exhausted. And this kid then is supposed to go into school and to maintain focus and to concentrate on what the teacher is teaching. How can you be focused when you don't have a good night's sleep? And often these kids then, they're labeled as stupid kids, you know, because they don't have the capacity to concentrate. But it's not the kids' fault. The problem is that we as a society, we are not looking at the effect of mouth breathing on sleep. And I can give you plenty of stats, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. But there is a huge link between attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and mouth breathing. Look at the kids with these issues and how much of an epidemic is happening here. If we look at stats in the United States, 1 in 10 children are affected with behavioral issues, attention deficit issues, autism, and other conditions. And I'm not saying that they're all related to mouth breathing, but I am saying this. Mouth breathing is going to adversely affect each of these conditions because ultimately we need to get a good sleep and we also need to improve oxygen delivery to the brain. So how can you do that? And I know you were going to ask me a question there. What I would like your listeners to do are, you could do a simple exercise at home just to demonstrate if there's truth in it. We often hear about breathing exercises and we're told to take a deep breath and we're told to take a big breath. And there's a belief out there that the harder we breathe, the more oxygen gets delivered to the cells. But the opposite takes place. Have your listeners do this. Just put one hand on the chest, one hand just above the navel. Focus on their breathing and start feeling the airflow as it comes in and out of the nose. And gently start slowing down the speed of the breath as it enters the nostrils. And at the top of the breath, have a total feeling of a relaxed, slow, gentle breath out. And then the next breath, you're slowing down the speed of the breath as it enters the nose. At the top of the breath, you have a total relaxed, slow breath out. So the whole objective is that when you are breathing, that you're breathing hardly any air into the nose. And your breathing is so light, almost as if you can feel hardly any air coming into the nose. The objective is to feel air hunger. The objective is to slow down your breathing sufficiently so that you feel that you're not getting enough air. Do that for 3 to 5 minutes. Check your body temperature and also check the saliva in the mouth. Increased watery saliva in the mouth is an indicator that the body is being brought into relaxation. And body temperature will tend to increase as your blood vessels dilate. Now, we use the same process with asthma because, of course, if you have somebody with asthma, again, there's a bit of a cycle there. If the airways are narrowing, you feel that you're not getting enough air. So it's normal for an asthmatic kid or adult to start breathing harder. And as you breathe harder, you're literally sucking moisture out of the airways, which in turn is causing the airways to constrict, and you've got a vicious cycle. And that's what we want to address. Simple tools that could save a lot of money and possibly could save lives.
Yeah, because it's carbon dioxide that drives respiration, isn't it? It's the expulsion of carbon dioxide rather than the need for oxygen. Exactly. But something I want to say is like this sort of chicken and egg question. Is the mouth breathing making us more sympathetic and stressed, or is it being sympathetic and stressed that makes us mouth breathing?
It will be both. It will be both.
Cycle of both, yeah.
Yeah, I would say...
You know yourself with the world today, everyone's just like, go, go, go. Like I always joke that, because I've done a little bit of, a study with some organizations in terms of breathing, like with PRI, like, they're big.
Yes.
Respiration
yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Like, their thing is that the majority of people are stuck in inhalation. They don't know how to exhale. They can't get their ribs down and they can't get that full exhalation out. And like when I used to explain that sort of to people initially, I would say, like, have you ever spoke to someone who talks about a really stressful day? And like, what do they sound like? And they go, and then we went to the bank and then it was closed. And then I spilled the coffee on John's new trousers and it was just off. I was just like, that person just needs to.
Yes.
And keep go. Because the big thing in the strength and conditioning sort of world over the last 4 or 5 years, the physical preparation, sports preparation, human performance, whatever coaches are calling themselves so different. Like everyone's like, I don't call myself a strength and conditioning coach. I'm a human performance coach, whatever the fuck people call themselves nowadays. But a big thing has been breath, like a huge thing. So this big thing, and it kind of came to your eyes, that most of our athletes are in wicked extension. They're in these extension patterns. So like it's in PRI call it posterior exterior, the posterior exterior chain. So PEC, it's just basically like you've got massive lower doses, and that's a sympathetic posture. And they're like, while that's a very important posture while you're in competition, because competition is sympathetic, like that's actually where you do want to be sympathetic. The problem is that people can't switch that off. Yeah. And they live in that state. And then so a lot of these drills came around of getting the ribs down, flatten out the lumbar, breathing through the nose, full exhalation through like pursed lips, like you're trying to blow. But they use balloons and all, like to try and get people to engage in exhaling. Like, so it's been a big thing. But yeah, sorry, my question there, as you said it, and you answered it, is both. Like, is it the breathing lead the stress, is stress lead the breathing, and it kind of seems to be both. So my next question though is then like, how can we change this breathing pattern? And like, obviously the initial step is to bring it to people's awareness, because even when I was like, it's funny, like I look back nowadays, like say like 9 years ago, 2010, I was telling people all about like blue light, like how bad blue light was at night, and everyone's like, shut up, that's a load of crap. Now everyone nowadays, like even like your grandmother and your man, they're like, oh yeah, look at your screens, I hear that's bad for you. I was saying breathing when I was introducing breathing about like 2012, 7 years ago. Like I said, like you'd be there telling people, you don't, like, people don't breathe right. Like, what are you talking about? I'm alive. It's like, there's more to it than that. So, how do you go about, and how can we make this nasal breathing more of the primary pathway people breathe through if they've a whole life habituated to mouth breathing?
A very simple thing is start wearing paper tape across your lips during sleep.
Oh, that's I've tried that and it's tough.
Well, it's only tough because you're probably, because of years of mouth breathing, you're feeling you're not getting enough air. So you feel suffocated. It's like an individual who's been eating 6 or 7 meals a day, and you tell them, go on a diet, and the next thing is they're feeling starved for food. But the body needs to make that transition. What we want is light breathing and efficient breathing. But if you're, say, having the mouth taped and you're feeling suffocated, it means that our breathing is labored. So we want to make that change. The first thing I would say is, yes, pay attention to whether you're breathing in and out through the nose. You can also do very, very simple breathing exercises. Lie on the back have your knees bent, place a book just above your navel. So your book is resting on your midriff between, for instance, just where the diaphragm is. And the diaphragm is basically at the base of the ribs. And as you're breathing in, gently guide the book upwards, but as you're breathing out, gently guide the book down. But then start slowing down the breath, because the objective is to get air hunger. And the whole objective of air hunger is to deliberately increase carbon dioxide in the blood, to reduce the body's sensitivity to the gas CO2. Because, as you said, carbon dioxide is the primary stimulus to breathe. But if you have a strong ventilatory response to CO2, in other words, if you have a strong sensitivity to the buildup of CO2 in the blood, it means that your breathing is going to be hard. It's going to be heavier. And heavy breathing and hard breathing is stressful breathing. So this is why athletes gas out too soon. But look at where these people are breathing into. They're primarily breathing using the upper chest. But our diaphragm is not just a breathing muscle. It performs quite a few functions, as you touched on here. Functional movement and functional breathing go together. If you have dysfunctional breathing, you're going to have dysfunctional movement. The diaphragm is very important for stabilization for the spine. It's very important for motor control. It's important for balance. But also with that, ideally is that we have the mouth closed and the tongue resting in the roof of the mouth. And a recent paper showed that resting tongue posture also affects balance. So if you have the mouth open, we don't have the tongue resting in the roof of the mouth, because of course the mouth is open, so we're breathing through the mouth. So the tongue is resting lower on the floor of the mouth. So it all goes together. So, and I would say also 30% of the population in Ireland have rhinitis, so a stuffy nose. I'll show you how to free it. Take a normal breath in through your nose. Now, by the way, don't do this exercise if you're pregnant or any cardiovascular issues or high blood pressure. But other than that, it's pretty safe. But you take a normal breath in through the nose and normal breath out through the nose. You pinch your nose with your fingers to hold your breath and gently nod your head up and down, holding your breath. And hold your breath for as long as you can. And keep holding your breath until you feel a really strong air hunger. But then you let go, but you breathe in through your nose. Wait a minute, do it again. Your nose will be open if you do that 5 times. That's all it takes. So to decongest the nose, even if you've got a head cold, do a strong breath hold. Now, what else is happening during that strong breath hold? As you hold the breath, carbon dioxide increases in the blood. Oxygen levels will drop a little bit. But the respiratory center in the brain is sensing that there's a change in the biochemistry in the blood. So it starts sending a message via the phrenic nerve to the diaphragm. And your diaphragm will start contracting. So you were saying that individuals, that their diaphragm can be in a very stuck position. So yeah, you can get into the diaphragm with manual manipulation, but you can also target the diaphragm by doing breath holding. Because when you hold your breath, your brain naturally reacts by sending message to the diaphragm, and the diaphragm starts to contract. So it's almost that you're giving your diaphragm a workout. So that in turn then is, I want to have functional breathing using the diaphragm, but I want to have slow breathing, because if you have an individual, just as in the example that you gave, you have somebody who's stressed, they're talking, they're hyperventilating, they're running out of air. The best way to bring the body into relaxation is that the breath out is relaxed and slow as possible. But if you have a habit of over breathing, you don't have a relaxed and slow breath out because you're feeling suffocated. So that's why we want to change. In terms of breathing, we have to look at the biochemistry, the biomechanics, and also the psychophysiological aspect of it. But it's easy. A few simple breathing exercises can make all the difference. And it's not about taking the big breath.
Yeah, I've heard actually people say that's why a lot of people smoke. Because when they go outside and smoke a cigarette, it's because they actually breathe in fully and then they exhale out nice and slowly. So that's for some people.
It could be part of it. I don't know. Could be part of it.
The relaxation. Just with regards to those figures, so 500,000 Irish are asthmatics. I know you said 5 million in England, 20 million in other talks you've given.
Yes.
In America.
Yeah.
30% of rhinitis, and then the tongue in the roof of the mouth there balanced. Do you actually have the papers for those statistics? That's just me now. I'm not asking. I'm not being an asshole. I just like to see.
No, of course. the Asthma Society of Ireland, they'll typically have statistics up for asthma, and it'll be in around 500,000 people. But more precise, it's going to be
That's a shock. Sorry to cut. That's a shocking. Like, is that
10%.
that Republic of
10% of the
Ireland
Irish population. In the Republic of Ireland, it's 470,000 people. Now,
with asthma?
with asthma, yes.
Fucking hell.
And that hasn't changed in about 15 years. So there's no sign of this decreasing. For rhinitis, it's typically between, depending on the country that you're looking at, between 10 to 30% have rhinitis. And rhinitis is a stuffy nose. But the real issue with rhinitis is, and this includes hay fever, by the way. So there's two types of rhinitis. One is perennial, that you have a stuffy nose most days of the year, for at least an hour a day or so. And you can be affected by dust mites. And then allergic rhinitis is seasonal, so it's going to be pollen. If you have a stuffy nose, it's your sleep that's affected. But also a stuffy nose is causing mouth breathing. And mouth breathing then is having such a knock-on effect in terms of upper chest breathing, reducing oxygen uptake, reducing oxygen delivery, and activating that fight or flight response. So
what is causing this epidemic in mouth breathing? Now, one thing I will say, and you can shed more light on this for us. I know when you look back at like Weston Price's work.
Yes.
I remember when I read that book the first time, and he was showing the photographs of people who to him now, because like my dental knowledge would just be like any layperson. I didn't have a clue.
Sure.
Dental breadth and what is a good structure and what really is good teeth. But I can remember when I read that book for the first time and I was looking at the pictures of what he was saying, this is good dental structure. I was like, holy fuck, their faces are so broad.
Yes.
Like it seems so foreign to me, because I'm so used to looking at people kind of with our faces, kind of like very skinny and narrow and crowded teeth.
Yeah.
And like then it made me think, God, like that's actually how we should be designed in terms of our dental structures.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what has led to this epidemic in, narrow dental structure, crowding of teeth, mouth breathing? Is it a fact, is it an epigenetic thing? It's multiple things. It's the lifestyle we have now. It's, it's circadian mismatches, it's nutrition, it's prenatal environment. And then after the child is born, I know you said teething could be issues too. Like, just even we're on video here for the listeners on Zoom, Patrick can see me here. Like my face is real skinny. Like I had some teeth pulled and dental work done when I was younger, and like I know that my mouth's too narrow. Like, but in your opinion, like what are some of the main causes? I know I might have answered the question there for you, but some of the main causes, and then I suppose what can we do to mitigate this? Is it a case of dental work? I'll let you answer now just one second. I just want to finish up with this. I've one very good friend of mine over in America. He's a friend and he's a mentor. He's a physical therapist, which would be a physio here in Ireland. Bill Hartman, and he's 53, like, and he recently only got braces the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So I know you're saying you're in your 40s now, and you had your braces. Like his dental work has made, he said, he tracks his sleep with an Oura ring, and he says since he's got his dental work all done, like, and his arches sorted out, he's like, his breathing through his nose and his sleep has like improved exponentially. But with his dental work, whatever way they've done it, it made his maxilla grow forward and out, not like push the teeth back. So it was just interesting here. But anyway, take it away there. Sorry.
I'd love to know who we went to. There's 2 schools of thought in orthodontistry. I'll just touch on orthodontistry first, and then I'll give you my ideas on why we're having very narrow arches and narrow faces. 2 schools of orthodontics. One school is the orthodontist who was trained in a university. Traditionally, they see that the problem of crooked teeth is that the teeth are too big. So let's remove teeth. Whereas a functional orthodontist will say that the problem of crooked teeth is not that the teeth are too big, it's that the jaws are too small. So let's widen the jaws to make room for the teeth. Now, if you look at this here is our upper airway. And our upper airway consists of the nasal cavity, the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and here we have the airway here. A good airway is the size of your thumb. Now, if we have teeth pulled for orthodontics, so we have extractions to make room for teeth, what's going to happen to jaws? The jaws are going to go back. And as a result, the airway is going to be affected. And that is a major, major problem. So I would say to anybody here, anybody who's doing orthodontic treatment, or if your kids are, don't get extractions and don't get retraction, because you want to maximize the size of your airway. Now, that's one aspect of it. So seek out a functional dentist or a functional orthodontist.
Is there any in Ireland, do you know?
There's only a couple. There's a really good one in Dublin, Dr. Andrew Hatterall. He's a Northside shopping centre. There's one in Cork, very good one, is Tony O'Connor, Dr. Tony O'Connor. And there might be a couple as well scattered around. I know there's another man in Cork, and his name is totally escaping me.
Reach out to his people if you're listening to this.
So, you know, there are some dentists who are very educated about airway. And internationally, there's new campaigns happening. Right2Grow.org was set up by patients who had extractions and retraction, develop sleep apnea. So orthodontics can cause a lot of damage to the face and to the airway. We have to be careful. And I'm not saying that all traditional orthodontics fall into this bracket, but what I am saying is that if you are seeking out orthodontics, don't get extraction, don't get retraction. You've got 32 teeth, hold on to them. So coming back to it, I actually like Weston Price's work very much. I know he has his critics in terms of the science, etc., but we have to bear in mind the book was written back in the 1930s. I'll tell you a story. I was in Lithuania just about a month ago. I was giving a conference at a dental clinic, a pretty big dental clinic. And they uncovered in Lithuania, they uncovered skulls of 18 Lithuanian people who were murdered by the Russians back in 1918. And basically these were Lithuanian people who were rebels. So they were causing a revolution. And the Russians at the time hung them, so killed them. Now, the bodies were found, and the dental clinic where I was working at, it was their job to identify the skulls. So I was looking at the photographs and the facial structure. Now, it was incredible. Wide, broad faces, but forward growth, because ideally, the tip of the chin is almost to the point of the nose. And mine is set back as well. And it could be a very Irish thing that, you know, this is part of the environment with genetics, but all mouth breathers are going to have crooked teeth. And the basis of that being is because if you have your mouth open, you don't have your tongue in the roof of the mouth. And your tongue is wide and U-shaped. And it's the pressures exerted by the tongue against the top jaw, which is pushing the top jaw forward and also widening the shape of the face. So a wide facial structure is much healthier. Now, you know, if any of your listeners are there and they're saying, oh my God, I've got a narrow facial structure, don't worry about it, but start nasal breathing. I have a very compromised nose. I've got very narrow nostrils. If you have narrow nostrils, you're more likely to mouth breathe. You know, and the other thing is when you smile, if you see black triangles either side of your jaws, so your jaws, you shouldn't see black triangles. Your jaws should fit the size of your mouth. And if you see black triangles, you know then that your jaw is just a little bit too narrow. If you are embarking on expansion, be very careful that it doesn't cause gum recession. I have some gum recession as a result of it. Now, I had brilliant orthodontist, but it wasn't my orthodontist that caused the gum recession, because I started with expansion about 6 years ago. And I finished it then with an orthodontist from California, Dr. Bill Hang, who was absolutely tremendous. And he then kind of put everything in place. I think it's good to do, and I think it's certainly good to look at expanding the jaws. And all it is a little appliance, and you turn the screw, and you just gently expand it. But bear in mind, the younger you do it, the better. And the younger kids do orthodontic treatment, the better. So what's causing mouth breathing? Well, it's certainly a modern day phenomena. It can be a chicken and an egg. I've seen it with my own daughter. She was born with very narrow facial structure. She was born with a very narrow high palate. And as a result then, she is going to have small nostrils. And if you have small nostrils, you're more likely to mouth breathe. So
you're like, this is my gift to you, darling.
Exactly. So she is my genetics. But my parents did not have those facial structures. My parents had wide facial structures. But this is happening very, very quickly. As Western Price showed, it happened, all it took was one generation. So one generation when we switched from a very traditional diet over to a processed diet. That's how quickly it's happening. And the one thing that I will say is sleep. Because if you look at statistics of sleep, and sleep apnea gets very little attention in this country. A Swiss study showed that men over 50 years of age, men over 50 years of age, between the ages of 50 and 69, 43% of men in that age group are at high risk of obstructive sleep apnea. So it's almost 1 in 2. Now, if you're having obstructive sleep apnea, and it's going to be more common in people who mouth breathe, people with asthma, etc., it puts a big stress on the heart. It's linked with several conditions, dementia, stroke, high blood pressure, for example, and individuals who are dying maybe at 45 years of age, and you hear of them dying in their sleep. I would suspect sleep apnea there is going to be an issue. You can't obviously say with post-mortem, but most certainly sleep issues, including sleep apnea, are going to be a big problem, and it's your facial structure that's going to contribute to that.
Great stuff, great stuff. Because just something that, just going back to Weston Price's work there, like something I've always taught, just even just looking at my own facial structure and then just kind of looking at, I suppose, the day-to-day individuals I see just around here in Dublin. Like I'll just like I'll comment on myself here, because I suppose just because it might sound bad if I'm talking about just people and every day, but like my face is crooked as fuck. Like my eyes are off, and my ears are off. Like I remember I was trying to tell my parents one day, I was like, look, can you not see like that I have one bigger nostril than the other? And like I always think back to like just like again my dental structure and my respiration habits, and then it makes me think of things like how much of a detriment I have on like my cranial development, and then my brain, and then not only even like the oxygen, I can't say oxygenation I'm trying to say, but the oxygen to my brain, but even like the actual bony structure of my skull. Like I'm trying to think, did I actually like have like some detriment now to like my brain, and the fact like my orbits, my eyes are crooked, like do I have a suboptimal sensory input from my visual system that could have been better? Basically I could have just been a better, more savage, robust human being if I breathed it right from day one, you know, that kind of way. But like aside from you kind of answered this already, aside from, because dental work can be quite expensive,
yes,
what else can people start to do now in terms of
start
nasal breathing?
Start changing your breathing patterns.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. And even like when I first switched from mouth to nose breathing, I was feeling very suffocated. And I was feeling suffocated because I developed the breathing pattern disorder. Keep practicing even gentle breathing exercises. You'll get some of them up on YouTube for free. You know, we've got, if there's one exercise there, many small breath holds to stop an asthma attack. I did a TEDx talk here in Galway.
I'll put that that'll be in the show notes, just so you know.
There's a couple of exercises in that. Start putting it into practice and making the switch to breathing through the nose. It's not normal to breathe with an open mouth. And also make a habit of getting your tongue into the roof of the mouth, and your tongue, to find the correct position of the tongue, pop your tongue like this. So in order to make that sound, you have to elevate your tongue to create a vacuum to pull down the tongue. But that's where the tongue should be all the time. Now, I can send you on that link for that paper with regards posture stability.
Please do.
And tongue placement, because it will fit as well with what your role is. But I remember being at a conference in Rome, and I can't think of the doctors. This was a medical conference. And they had individuals with poor walking gait. And basically the doctor just got the individual, showed them where to have the tongue, resting up in the roof of the mouth, and they had the cameras on them, and there was no editing, and then had the individuals walk, and their walk improved just by changing tongue posture. So the human body, it's almost that it's one kind of chain, or one, you know, everything has to be in line, everything has to be in order. And mouth breathing is just one of those things that is going to disrupt everything. But, you know, yes, you said that you've got a crooked nose. I have the same. And it's going to be very, very common in individuals who have been mouth breathing. It doesn't matter. Use what you have and keep working with it. The human body is an amazing, intelligent organism. And the nose is very intelligent too, because I'll give you this example. We have individuals who are scheduled for turbinate reduction surgery. And turbinates are these soft structures within the nose that are swollen. And typically they're removed by surgery. And sometimes people are saying to me, well, I don't really want to go down that route because I'm a bit afraid of going under the knife, etc. I say, listen, start breathing through your nose, start doing the exercise, start using your nose. And in a few instances, we've had individuals go back to their ENT and their turbinates had reduced without surgery. We did a small pilot study with Limerick Regional Hospital back in 2013. It was published in the journal Clinical Otolaryngology, and it showed that nasal symptoms reduced by 71% at 3-month follow-up. And this was with 26 patients with asthma and rhinosinusitis. Now, the professor there was Professor John Fenton. He is an ear, nose and throat in Limerick. But even if you were to look at the work of Dr. James Bartley, who's an ear, nose and throat consultant from New Zealand, and he's writing about the importance of breathing through the nose. And yet we're not doing it. You know, if I think about it this way, the Asthma Society of Ireland, for about 15 years, I've been requesting their CEOs, start encouraging your members to breathe through the nose, because it's your nose that protects the lungs. And the nose and the lungs are linked. It's one airway. You know, we consider that the nose is one airway and the lungs is one airway. No, it's not. Since 2007, it's recognized that the nose and the lungs is a unified airway. Whatever happens with the lungs will travel up to the nose, and whatever happens in the nose will travel down to the lungs. We know that the vast majority of people with asthma open their mouth and breathe through it. The nose is simple, that it's a protective mechanism to warm, to moisten, to filter, to neutralize germs and bacteria. There's a gas, nitric oxide, that's released into the nasal cavity. Nitric oxide sterilizes the air before it comes into the lungs. Nitric oxide is a bronchodilator. It helps open up the airways. Nitric oxide also opens up the blood vessels in the lungs to allow better gas exchange to take place. But yet, no society, and I'm putting down to the Asthma Society of Ireland, they never expressed one bit of interest in telling their members to breathe through their noses. Because probably what we're saying is too simple. But all I can say is, if any person with breathing issues, the first thing to do is start using your body's own defense mechanism to help yourself. It just makes sense.
Can't make money off that shit, Patrick.
Well, that's part of it. That's absolutely part of it.
And it's funny because I've been reading a lot of anatomy physiology lately, just because I'm a nerd. But that's what I've been reading a lot lately.
That's good.
When I was going through my cranial nerves, like when I was just going through them, I always found it interesting. It was like, cranial nerve 1. It's like, it's to the nose. Because usually, like, you know, vision is, because like 2 is vision, and you know, so much of the nervous structures to vision and vestibular, and like, so when we talk about sensory systems, like so much of it is visual and vestibular, because vision is the primary one for humans. I mean, whereas like for a rat or a rodent, like you want to see like the part of their brain dedicated to just their smell. It's huge. But the very first cranial nerve is actually to do with olfactory in humans, which kind of, you know, just going off how important it is that we do nasal breathe. Let's say like I'm a parent. I'm not now, but I'm a parent listening to this, and I'm driving my car now. Don't crash. You know, keep going here. But like I'm panicking. I'm like, oh Jesus, our baby's born. I don't want to end up being a mouth breather. Sorry, just a quick digression here too. It was funny. I'd recently just listened to, it was definitely something you were on. And then I heard the comedian Bill Burr, he's one of my favorite comedians. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he kept saying this phrase, and I was like, he must be doing some breathing techniques, because he kept talking about how every village idiot breathes through their mouth. He just kept saying something like, I'm paraphrasing, but he could go, all these idiots, mouth breathing idiots, just mouth breathing idiots. And I'm just like, this sounds like Patrick McKeown talking about the village idiot. You know, because you see those movies, they're all like, their mouth open. But anyway, let's say I'm a parent, and I either have a child just born, or we're expecting a baby, and like, you're like every parent, you're like, I don't want to fuck up my kid. But from this breathing perspective, because you know yourself, you see a baby, like everything is just like it's like a slow car crash. It's like it's all so perfect. They
Yes.
squat
Yeah.
perfectly.
Yeah.
They hinge perfectly.
Yeah.
They breathe like Buddha in their belly. Like
Yeah.
everything they do is just perfect, and then we fuck
Yes.
them up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what can we do to sustain this
Yeah.
belly breathing?
Well, when the baby is born, the baby is normally going to breathe perfectly. And a baby has to breathe through the nose. And the reason being is because the soft palate here and the epiglottis, they meet and they overlap.
Mm.
So the baby then can't breathe through the mouth because there's no room to get the air through. So as a result, they have to nasal breathe. But it's after a few months that the epiglottis and the soft palate come apart. And normally the baby will continue nose breathing unless they get an upper respiratory, unless the nose gets stuffy, and it may do so with teething. And what happens then is that the child will continue nose breathing and struggle to try and get air through the nose, but then they will switch to mouth breathing. A few things. Day one, just check and ask a healthcare professional to check if the baby is tongue-tied. And a tie, I'm tongue-tied. A tongue tie basically is when you lift up your tongue, you see there's a string, as you see the string there with you. And if the string is too tight, it means that the tongue is held to the floor of the mouth. Now, the problem here is that if the child is tongue-tied, they have difficulty in breastfeeding. So if the child can't get the tongue from the floor of the mouth to draw milk from the breast, it means that the child then is going to be chomping on the mother. The child isn't getting enough milk. The child doesn't thrive. And as a result, a bottle is introduced. However, breastfeeding is not just about nutrition. Everybody knows about breastfeeding for nutrition, but breastfeeding is for manipulation of the muscles of the face and the jaw because it takes effort to take milk from the breast.
Yeah.
And if we give the baby a bottle, that milk just flows effortlessly. And as a result, then you have a baby with poor muscle tone. So that's probably one of the first things that we can be looking at very early on. Now, like I look at my own daughter, and age 3 and age 4 years of age, I started to notice that she's, as I said, like she has my inherited characteristics, which are not good in terms of breathing. And she was starting, especially if she had a head cold, that she started holding her breath during sleep. And I'm watching this and I'm saying, okay, she's having sleep apnea. And every time that she'd stop breathing, then she was moving position in the bed. So I was making contact with people in the US and they said, listen, you have to get tonsillectomy and adenectomy. So I went down that route and I will have to say I would never do it again. It was very invasive. It's very traumatic, but there is another way to do it. The reason that my child was having breathing difficulties was a combination of enlarged adenoids, but small airway. So the adenoids are here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but basically at the back of the nose, there's lymphoid tissue. And if that becomes enlarged, it blocks the back of the nose. And as a result, the child then is breathing through the mouth. Tonsils can be enlarged as well. So the airway is impacted. Now, with enlarged adenoids, it can be quite common in kids from age, say, 3 up to about 7 years of age. The issue is not just the adenoids. The issue is the airway. So if you have a child that you suspect that the adenoids to be enlarged, bring the child to a functional dentist and get the dentist to have forward growth of the jaw to make room. Once the young kid starts breathing through the nose, then harnessing nasal nitric oxide should shrink the adenoids. Now, I've been encouraging parents to do that, and we have seen results that the adenoids are shrinking now without having to get them removed. But it can take, you need multidisciplinary, you need a dentist here to intervene. So that's just one option. So another aspect of it would be is, don't worry if you see your child is breathing through the mouth the odd time when they're 3, 4 years of age, because sometimes you can become a broken record. But there are simple exercises that, you can be giving kids. Like when I have children coming into the clinics, they come in with parents. The first thing I do, and it sounds a bit bizarre, I say 6 kids come in and there's 6 mums or dads come in. And I talk about the whole nasal breathing. We go through that. And then I have the kids and the parents wear paper tape across their lips. So in the class itself, we have all of the kids wear the paper tape, because now I'm going to start getting them breathing through the noses. And one of the instructions I say is that when the parents go home, anytime the child is distracted, wear paper tape across the lips. Because what I want to do is I need to get neuroplasticity. I need the brain to realize that the nose is for breathing with. And during the day, we have the kids wear the tape. We start off at about 15 minutes a day with the exercise, by the way, as well. So the exercises are designed to open up the nose, to change their breathing pattern so it's more comfortable to breathe through the nose. But it's not just that we want to change their, it's not enough just to give them breathing exercise. I also need them to reestablish the pattern of breathing through the nose. Paper tape is really, really good. Watch a movie, just have a piece of paper tape there. And I know it can sound a little bit bizarre, but it's the best thing that we have seen. Your listeners, Google all of this. None of this information is new. Dental Cosmos, 1909, they wrote about the perils of mouth breathing. And this has been debated in the dental industry for over 100 years. And yet dentists haven't reached a consensus on the recognition that mouth breathing is causing crooked teeth. And I'll cite Harvold. E.P. Harvold was a functional orthodontist in North America. And he's seen that it was kids coming in with mouth breathing who had the most craniofacial problems, narrow jaws, overcrowding of teeth, etc. So he got groups of rhesus monkeys. They were 6 months old. And he blocked one group of monkeys with their noses. He blocked their noses with silicone nose plugs. Another group, he put something in the roof of the mouth so that monkeys couldn't get the tongue into the roof of the mouth. All of the experimental animals, the ones with the nasal obstruction, they all developed craniofacial changes which were different to the control animals. In other words, mouth breathing in the monkeys caused abnormal changes to the face. And these changes are the same found in humans. Now, dentists then will debate. Catherine Vig, for instance, I just put up videos on YouTube looking at this, because the question I'm asking is, as a lay person looking in, how come something is so obvious, but yet a medical and dental profession haven't caught on to this? So Catherine Vig is an orthodontist in the United States, and she wrote a paper. She says, we can't rely on Harvold's studies because Harvold totally blocked the noses of the monkeys. And total nasal obstruction is rare in humans. But here she missed the point. It's not about the degree of nasal obstruction. It's about whether the nose was sufficiently stuffy to cause mouth breathing, because it's mouth breathing that's causing the problem. So that's why I would say, with parents, coming back to that again, get your kids to do the tongue pops. Anytime young babies, North American Indian mothers, there's a book called Shut Your Mouth and Save Your Life, written back in the 1800s. And every time that the baby had the mouth open, the Indian mothers would come over and exactly, so you've heard of it, they'd press the lips together. So our ancestors knew about the importance of nasal breathing. Look at Neanderthals, that paper that came out there last year. Researchers were looking at, why do Neanderthals have such big noses, and why do they have such big jaws? And the reason being was because it allowed nasal breathing even during physical exercise. So look at the animal world. With the exception of a dog, very few animals nasal breathing unless they're sick. When I was writing one of the books, and I couldn't find it, I was looking at veterinary textbooks. Farm animals, if they're sick, will have the mouth open. Diving birds tend to mouth breathe. But the vast majority, when I mean the vast majority, I mean I could only find 4 that actually can mouth breathe in health. And all other animals, nasal breathers, a horse, cats, etc. Humans, we have lost the basic art of something that's so fundamentally innate. And the primary physiological normal mode of breathing is in and out through the nose for the human being. And that's what we have to establish. It's not just about nasal breathing. It's also about using the diaphragm, and it's slow breathing. Because all of it comes together for both sleep, for focus, for exercise performance, and also for the mind.
Just a slight digression here. It just came into my mind there about mastication. You were talking about the muscles in around the mouth, from breastfeeding. It just made me think there. how much our food has changed in terms of the foods we eat in the last 100
Yes.
years. And I'm just thinking, what detriment has that had on, again, the facial and cranial
Yes.
development? Because, you know, eating the local foods to your local environment, obviously that must have had some impact on the development of like all those massification muscles and development of, again, the facial bones and whatnot, and even to a degree the cranial bones as well.
Yeah.
And then like another thing too is like TMJ dysfunction is huge like nowadays.
Yes.
If you like, I'd even ask this to the listeners. Probably ask some of your mates, does your jaw click when you chew? And I'd say you'll find the majority of, oh yeah, or like, you know, so many people like they get a little bit of lockjaw or everything now and again. Like that's not normal. Like,
No, it's not. No,
but
definitely
it made
not.
me think there. The reason why I have a friend, Pat Davidson, he's an absolute genius. You'd love him, like nerd too. Like he's actually a PhD in exercise and sport physiology. He actually was originally a professor at Springfield College, America, which is huge. But he's a freelance coach now. But he'd be one of the top recognized kind of coaches, consultants. Speaks a lot around America and whatnot. But he did some presentation there last year, and I know parts of it where he was talking a lot about mastication, like, and how like that, you know. We only briefly spoke about this. I didn't see his presentations, but it was that basically like we just have weak jaws nowadays, like, and like the detriment that has systemically on the body. Like even just going back to your example there about putting the tongue into the roof of your mouth that make people walk better. I mean, mechanistically, because I'm one of those assholes. I'm not an asshole, like, but I'm always like the devil's advocate guy. Or when someone just says something like, whenever I'm at a seminar and someone goes, this will help you by 72%. I'm like, where are you pulling 72% out of? Like,
Sure.
what? Like, 'cause so many people pull that shit, and you're just like, and they go, well, there was this, and it's just like, you know, I just
Sure.
I hate bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, and listen, I'm one of these people. I'm not all right brain. I'm not all left brain. I'm not all objective. I'm not all subjective. I'm critically minded. Like, I'm nice. I like to think I'm in the middle. But like even there with putting the tongue into the roof of the mouth and making someone walk better from a coordination or balance standpoint, like mechanistically you could explain that, because if you put the tongue to the roof of your mouth, it actually the muscles in your neck, they actually stabilize the neck better, which could mean then that your vision's more horizontal, which mean you're more balanced because you're just better sensory input coming from your vision. So there's a, like, as long as someone could like explain things mechanistically and say, well, listen, we don't know, but here's a mechanism we think could be plausible.
Sure.
That type of thing. But sorry, I'm long-winded here. But just going back, you just made me think about like mastication and chewing. That's something I'm going to look into now, because I never really thought about like you know, again, the fact that we live in such a removed environment. Like we live in such a mismatched world. We live in perpetual summer, lighted homes, light and heated homes that are lit 24/7 and they're heated all year round. And we also can have transport foods from all around the world. Like we've got access to foods that we shouldn't have access to certain times of year, and we have access to foods that we would never have any access at any time of our years in our locality.
Sure.
And like, what sort of detriment is that having, like, on us, like at every level? Because I'm big into studying mitochondrial health, and my big thing actually is circadian biology, circadian rhythm, and like how like light affects like the function of your mitochondria and all that type of stuff. I'm massive into that at the moment. Just a question I do want to ask you is yawning. So like it's an epidemic. People yawning or sighing, like, or just people yawning. Why is that? That's obviously something to do with breathing dysfunction too, is it?
We don't know. There was a paper published in the International Journal of Sports Physical Therapy, and they looked at the relationship between functional movement and functional breathing. Was there a relationship there? So they ended up identifying that breath hold time. If your breath hold time was less than 25 seconds, and I mean a normal breath in, normal breath out, you're holding your nose. And if you can hold your breath comfortably for over 25 seconds, there's a very strong chance that you don't have breathing pattern disorders. But if you're not able to reach 25 seconds, there is a strong chance that you do have a breathing pattern disorder. But they also include 4 questions in that. One of the questions were, do you wake up with a dry mouth in the morning? Number 2, do you feel tense? Number 3, do you have cold hands or feet? And number 4, do you yawn a lot? Now, yawning, it's I don't know fully what's the relationship between breathing and yawning, but Typically,
sorry to cut across. I hear someone told me it's air hunger. Like, again, that's just a...
it could be. Now, certainly a sigh. If somebody comes into me and they're sighing a lot, that's a red flag for me. People with anxiety and panic disorder, they'll tend to sigh quite often. And these people also having a feeling of air hunger, an aversion to suffocation. And if they're having a panic attack, of course, the air hunger goes to the extremes that, they feel that almost as if they're going to die. But coming back to yawning, we know that people who have poor breathing and mouth breathing increases the risk of sleep disorder breathing by 1.8 times. And this in turn is going to increase fatigue, and it's natural to yawn when you're tired. But the full connection between, could it be air hunger that's causing the yawn? Yeah, typically I don't know, but certainly a sigh, yes. A sigh, yes.
Very, very good. Listen, I don't want to keep you too much longer because I know you're... Well, actually, people say I know you're busy. It's like, I actually don't. Like, you could be procrastinating all the time, really, and just make it look...
I'll show you my diary.
Here, you don't have to prove yourself to me, Patrick.
This is it's quite strange,
Oh, I love it. At least it's written.
It's funny. Tomorrow I fly to Berlin, and then I come back on Tuesday. So I'm back here on Wednesday. I'm back on Tuesday evening. I'm here for Wednesday, and then Thursday I fly to Ohio. And that's typically how it can go,
Ohio. There's a few people in Ohio. Eric Serrano, he's in Ohio. Louis Simmons got to Westside Barbell. You're actually not too far away from Indianapolis, where Bill Hartman, that guy I was saying about the physical therapist who he got his job and moved forward. You have a ton of stuff in your website. So just for for the listeners, maybe just tell them like what you have to offer there. You have your online courses, you have practitioner training. Maybe just give us an overview on that, because
there's two aspects to it. ButeykoClinic.com is health website, and there is a section on that for parents, and also our child's program is for free. So if you look at for the DVD sets or whatever, the children's online course, which is an hour with all of the exercise for children, absolutely free. We had a donation going back a few years, and we matched it ourselves, and we just put it out there, so there's no charge.
Just click on here now. Free online children's course. Great.
Yeah, it's so you'll have to find it there. I'm not sure which link it is.
I have it.
You have it there.
Yeah.
There's also on that then you'll have links for asthma, links for snoring, links for sleep apnea, links for anxiety, panic disorder. And I've just yesterday added new videos explaining the science behind what's happening there. So Buteyko Clinic is all about health. Oxygen Advantage then is about sports performance. It's about looking at the science, and you'll see, for instance, recently there was a new paper out, repeated sprintability in rugby union players. They were professional rugby union players, and repeated sprintability is a performance indicator in team sports. Within 4 weeks, improved it by 33%. And we use the same exercises that were in the papers. It's called the exhale hold technique. We breathe in through the nose, breathe out, pinch and sprint with the mouth breath held for 40 meters, 30-second recovery, do it again, 7 repetitions, 2 sets per week, and repeated sprintability to increase 33%. So you'll see those papers, the abstracts of them are all on those websites there. So so for health, it's ButeykoClinic.com. And for sports, it's oxygenadvantage.com.
Great. I'm just on the Oxygen Advantage website. So the papers you mentioned, they're on here, are they?
Yeah. So if you go to, it should be about, and then if you click on science, death science or science.
Oh, read the science. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you click on that, then you'll see there's 2 pillars to Oxygen Advantage. One is functional breathing, and the other is simulation of altitude training. So it's in the one program.
Good, yeah, I'll have a look for that. Because if I read it and I think it's a lot of pony, I'll let you know. I'll be like, here, this is bullshit, or else no, this is good. And again, I'm only joking. I like to play devil's advocate again, because it's just I'm 31 now. Like I'm going 32, still single, ladies. Still out there. I'm still available.
Oh, yeah.
But no, when I was young, getting into the field, you were like every young. You saw someone with some authority and they'd say something, and then you were just a parrot. And then you realised you got older, like, hold on a second, he was just talking shy. And I just fucking bought it, the son of a bitch.
Well, it's like this, Robbie. I was putting it into practice myself and experiencing the benefits firsthand.
Yeah.
And I've seen, and some of this, you can be working with a student and a client. You know it works. You mightn't have the science to back it up. We're always looking for evidence-based medicine, but sometimes it's not always shown in the studies what you see in practical.
I fully agree because there's evidence-based medicine, but then there's also practice-based evidence.
Yes.
So like, and again, if you waited for research, you'd be waiting donkey's years. I mean, Tom O'Brien, he's a chiropractor, but he did a ton of work on gluten and the immune system and all that. Like, he had a lecture there on one of his DVDs, and he said it on a podcast too. And again, listen, this could be horseshit, but apparently he was saying like the time it took for something to be discovered in research and for it to become like a mainstream thing within medicine was almost
20 years.
2 decades, 20 years. Yeah. So
you have to have 500 citations. You have to have 500 studies on PubMed before it becomes mainstream.
Now again, listen, I'm definitely not this person who's all about evidence-based, because good sort of, indirect mentor of mine, Paul Check, I know Paul's a fucking mad, he's a mad thing, like, he takes some things with a pinch of salt, like everyone wants like their people they look up to be perfect, like no one's perfect, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Martin Luther King had his flaws, Gandhi had his flaws, I'm sure Jesus had flaws if he was real or not. But Paul was saying, like, I really like the way he put this. He's like, there's education and there's experience. He says both are important. Yes. He's like, education, he says, if all you have is education without experience, he's like, you're like a fat, unhealthy, sick doctor, basically. You know the medicine, but you don't live it, you know what I mean? You don't.
Yes.
And then he's like, if you're someone who's all experienced without any of the science, he's like, you're airy-fairy and you're just aloof and everyth's great. So he's like, you need to have a bit of both worlds. Like, so I fully agree with that line of thinking too.
Yeah.
Are you okay just for another 2 or 3 minutes?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, just finish up with some rapid fire. Now, I say they're rapid fire questions, and then when people hear them, they go, these aren't rapid fire, these require thinking. What would you say have been the biggest lessons you've learned in your life so far?
Wow, they're not rapid fire.
I can see the wheels turning in your head. I'm going, that's not rapid fire at all.
The biggest lessons, sometimes something that seems or might seem bad at the time can turn into one of the best things that ever, even though you're not feeling it.
Yeah.
You're not sensing it. You don't know what's the purpose of what's happening. And it's only when you look back at it, and it can be very life-changing. So never discount something that seems to be negative, because you don't know how that's going to turn out in the long term.
Yeah, seeing obstacles as opportunities.
Can be, yes.
Yeah, the big time. How do you learn? What is your learning process? And just before you answer that, there's just a topic that you are just fascinated in and you just want to know everything about it. What's your process?
Okay, I print off a lot of material. Today I spent €125 on photocopying. Tomorrow I get on flights.
Man, you need to get a mate that's in a college.
Tomorrow I get on flights and I've printed off articles that I read. I read articles sitting in the airport, sitting on the flights, and I highlight it, and then that forms eventually it comes into presentations. So I'm always kind of keeping up to date with it, and it's just finding that link and joining the dots together, and how one thing leads into another. But it's also putting that then to the experience and asking yourself if the fit is there. So yeah, that's like, I'm constantly keeping up. A lot of the people I train are coaches, healthcare professionals. I give talks. Like last week or 2 weeks ago, I spoke at an ear, nose and throat conference in Madrid. So I'm talking to 150 ENTs, and I gave 2 presentations there, and I've been invited back now to their national conference.
Great stuff.
So you have to know your stuff, and you have to know your material and how it relates to that discipline. And also then in Berlin tomorrow, I work with its coaches and instructors for sports. And then when I come back, I go to Ohio to the Met Sleep Center. So I'm talking with dentists and doctors for sleep. Wow. But it's always, my field is breathing, and it's how my field is relating to their field. So that's why, even though I might be in a very narrow field, it has a relatively broad application.
Yeah. Is there anything you do on a daily basis that's essential to your day? Like, you have to do it every day?
I have to have a to-do list.
Okay.
I have to know where my work is going.
Do you make that the night before or the morning of?
No, it depends. I can sometimes do one for today I wrote yesterday. It can depend, but I always have to have something that I have to carry projects through from the start right to the end. Now, sometimes they can take a little bit more work than I thought. I'll give you an example. I brought out a sports mask. Your listeners will be familiar with the device, the training mask. And I know it attracted training mask when it came out initially, the claim simulation of altitude training, etc. It doesn't do that, but it's a respiratory muscle training device. Ultimately, that's what it is. So I started designing it, and then you're looking for a designer who has got good aesthetics, but also functionality, and it's very difficult to get to. So you go through a process, and I never realized the obstacles that you would approach when you're trying to bring something from design into production. And it cost, thousands in the long run, plenty of hurdles, plenty of frustrations, but I brought it through from start to finish. So I'm a little bit stubborn that way, and I think it's a thing that it's good, that not to give up. If your dream, your objective is there and it's fitting with your dream, keep going, because it's never a straight line, but keep going with it.
If you could give one resource to anyone, what would that resource be? And this could be anything. Could be a book,
yes,
could be a website resource, could be an individual to go spend some time with, could be a course that's online or personal. One resource.
One of the best things that I ever did 20 years ago was to read a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart.
Have it, yeah.
It's absolutely life-changing.
He's definitely a mouth breather, looking by his facial structure.
He's a strange-looking individual, but in terms of stillness of the mind, he really fits that space.
Yeah.
We're talking about breathing. The next epidemic is about social media, mobile phone technology, the increased risk of suicide, depression, and anxiety in the next generations. We have a big problem here. And really it's about, again, tapping into the full potential of the mind. And if the mind is extremely active and we have no control over it, it's a problem. But focusing on the breath is one way to help train the brain, and to train the brain to be concentrated and to be focused.
Yeah, it's trying to marry our modern technology to actually help.
Yes.
To actually help with that endeavor of getting more mindful. It's at the moment there seems to be a conflict between the two, but it's like we're not going to turn back where we've gone already and where technology's gone. So it's about trying to embrace that and trying to integrate that to enhance.
Yes. Well, I think it's been about selective about it.
That's exactly. Yeah.
We have to use it, and we have to use it like. It would be fun to be doing something every day of the week, but when we're doing it too much, the fun goes out of it and it becomes a negative. And
the research going into dopamine now and reward systems in the brain and just addiction is just fucking, it's huge. Yeah, but there is a massive issue. Like it's funny when you were saying before we hopped on, you're like, I'll just turn off my phone here. Like I kind of laughed to myself. I was like, I don't have a phone. And when I tell people that, look, you do it too.
Great.
Every time I tell people I don't have a phone, they're like, they're just
great.
Absolutely flabbergasted.
Yes.
Now, that's a half lie. I do have an iPhone, right? But there's no phone network on it. I haven't had a phone network on it for 4 years, and there's no WhatsApp on it because it's too old for the update.
Yeah.
So the only thing I get on is email, and my email's turned off all the time because I cannot stand it. Bing, bing. The only thing I use it for is watching YouTube when I'm eating, which I should really stop because I want to be more present when I eat. But see, I watch educational things when I eat, so I'm rewatching the Cold War again because I like history. And then I read iBooks off it. Like I read my PDFs off it. That's about it. But no, it's funny. It's funny.
Good stuff.
Last three for you. What is your top and your current book recommendations or reading recommendations? So if you give one book away, aside from The Power Now, because it sounds like one, what would be your top book, and then what are you currently reading?
Top book, I'm going to stick with The Power of Now. It's just, for me, it was life-changing.
Anything else?
A really good one is Tuesdays with Maurey. I think it's a very nice little book. I first got it, I put it down, I kind of ignored it. But I think it's a tremendous little book.
What's that about?
Tuesdays with Maurey was a school professor who was on his deathbed, and one of his old students came and interviewed him and asked him, "You've just lived your life. What was the most important lessons that you could impart?" And when you read this book, you know it rings with truth. There is something in it. It's a very small book. I think the author is a guy called Mitch Albom. It's a very famous book. So it's a tremendous little book. I'm reading a book on the power of the vagus nerve at the moment, on and off. I'm dipping in and out of it.
That nerve is, I was only literally just yesterday looking at it, the amount of shit that's connected to it. It's just like, it's the vagus nerve, cranial nerve 10. Yeah. Look at all the shit connected to it. Yeah, it is massive.
And it's amazing with regards to the autonomic nervous system and, baroreceptors, that the human body, the complexity of it. But that's one thing I like about breathing. It's simple, and it's through the breath that you can activate, you can affect your autonomic nervous system, by something that we've been doing for thousands of years, but we've lost the art of it.
Something, sorry, I meant to ask at the start. Your biggest influences, who've been your biggest influences, professionally and personally?
Professionally, the doctor who developed the method, the Buteyko method, Russian doctor Konstantin Buteyko, would have been huge.
Russian.
But I've other people who have made huge changes in my life, and I suppose I've never given them any credit. I went to a school in Declan, St. Declan's in Cabra, and they were pretty.
You went to Declan's?
Yeah, yes.
I know it well, yeah. I didn't go there, but I know it well. I know people who teach there. And
when I look back, there were some useless teachers there, but one man in particular was a man called Luke Brady, and Luke Brady and John Caffrey are the two teachers that stand out.
I know John well. I know John very. Yeah, I'm in a Phenom, so John's in a Phenom, man.
Well, I haven't seen those guys, either of them, since I've left in 1991.
That's gas.
But the only thing that I will say is that they make positive impacts in terms of getting the most out of youngsters. And when I'm talking about a youngster, a 16 and 17 and 18-year-old, but it's people like that we don't. And I often thought about Luke Brady, singing, we're moving on 30 years, is the man alive? You don't know anything about him. And I wonder, does he often think, what is his students doing now? So he was my English teacher. And at this time, I was not a good English student.
Yeah.
But now I've written 8 books, and these books have gone internationally, published into 14 languages. So does he know that? Probably not. But that's not what it's about. He gave me the inspiration to put my thoughts on paper.
I have to tell you something real quick about John Caffrey. Just you're saying he's a teacher.
Yes.
Myself and John were involved with a Dublin ladies football team, minor team, and we went on a one-day All-Ireland. This is like 7 years ago, 2012.
Yes.
But we were on the bus journey home, right? Mm-hmm. And the night before, the girls had put this DVD compilation together, for the management team and all that. And John turned to me and he's like, yeah, girls are, they're very good at showing their appreciation. And he goes like, lads wouldn't do that, but he goes, lads would do it in a different way. And I was like, gives an example, and he goes, okay, I'll give you an example. He goes, I was driving in the car or he says that I'd lads that were doing their leaving cert. So for the international listeners and US listeners, that'd be like doing it's when you're the exams to graduate from high school. In Ireland. So he said he had a group of lads come in, and he's a business teacher. And it was the morning or the day before or whatever the leaving cert. He was like, right, lads, these would be lovely questions to get on an exam. Do you get what I'm saying? And they're like, yes, sir, we get what you're saying. So John said then later that summer, he was driving in his car, and John's a huge man. He drives this tiny car, and he's driving along, and he sees one of his students walking down the footpath, so the sidewalk. And he's driving past, and he stops at a traffic light, and the student roars to him. He goes, sir, you're a genius, sir. And he goes, I got me results back. Business, got an A, sir. You're a genius. So he's just like, John's whole thing was like, girls would never like roar in the middle of public going, you're a genius, sir, fair play to you. But he's like, lads just showed us they're loving a different way. I just love that. Just saying that he was one of the better teachers. That's so funny. Sorry, last Sufi, I won't keep any longer. I definitely want to get you back on and talk more about the sports performance and oxygen advantage. You've got 1 year left on planet Earth. Now, you're not dying. You're leaving. You're getting onto the Starship Enterprise, but you're never coming back. So it's basically a one-way ticket to the stars. What would you do in your final year on Earth? It's just you going now. You're not taking anyone else with you or anything else. So you're leaving in 365 days.
I'd probably have a bit more balance. At the moment, my work takes a lot of what I do. I'm very lucky because
You
I
mean
will
your
show
you
you
mean your passion, your vocation? You don't work, buddy.
my vocation exactly. But in terms of hours, actually, I thought I was on a different camera there, but I'm not. I'm very lucky. I live in a place that's totally rural and totally isolated with
Love it.
absolute quietness and no neighbors for nearest mid neighbors about 3/4 of a mile away. I deliberately live here because
Do
I
they all
can
think?
come
Do they all
back.
think you're crazy? Ah, the breeding guy.
It doesn't matter, because it's about quality of life. But what
Yeah.
I would do is I would enjoy this more, as opposed to hopping onto a plane tomorrow. That's one thing that I would do. And spending time with family. And I do that. And, you're trying to balance everything. And we do the best that we can do. And there's, a lot of pressures out there. But it's about, I think it's about what is life about and how do we get the most out of it. So for 1 year, yeah, I would probably reduce work to a 4-hour work week. Um, I don't know if that's possible, but most certainly I would devote more time to family, more time to home. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well done. Last one for you. Okay, so I head up there to that rural part of Galway, and I drag you out, and I say,
Sure.
"Here, we're going for dinner, and you can invite 5 people to this dinner, dead or alive. Who would you bring to this dinner and why?" And family doesn't
Wow.
count.
Jesus.
Family is in like your partner or kids, like they don't count.
I think it would be very interesting to bring Jesus Christ would be one.
Ah, how you doing?
Um, um, Especially in terms of the stillness of the mind, because ultimately I think the foundation of all religions is very fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with life. It's about having a quietness of the mind that we do connect with life as opposed to living in our heads. A second person, oh, you've really caught me now. I don't know. And that's been honest with you. No idea. No idea.
At all? Come on, you must have some people there in mind. Anyone else there?
I think Einstein would be very interesting.
Hey, so you got Jesus,
Absolutely be
Einstein.
fascinating. And probably for similar reasons, in terms of the basic question that we are all running around as human beings and what's it all about? And I think somebody who can shed light on that answer.
Would you bring Eckhart Tolle?
Yes, I would. Yes, I think he's huge. In
You're
terms of
close now.
genuine.
You've only two left now. You're close. I'm getting you there. So you have Jesus, you have Einstein, you have Tolle.
Who else?
You be there educating them all on breathing, so you will.
Well, I think Oprah Winfrey could be very good.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Listen, any black female who becomes a billionaire, like there's something to that, like
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And a fifth person.
Yeah, dead or alive.
Dead or alive.
Oprah's alive anyway, and so is Eckhart Tolle.
And I don't know of a fifth. Krishnamurti, I would probably go with.
Oh wow! There's two Krishnamurtis now. So which one is it? Just
he was a spiritual leader who was born.
It's actually two of them, yeah. But I think I know the one you're talking about.
So he's written quite a few books in terms of a spiritual leader. So he's an Indian person who he died when he was about 92 years of age. And he had one thing he said: when I go for a 2-hour walk, he wants to have very few thoughts entering his mind. So he's connecting completely with nature around him as he's walking. Yeah,
I have a few Krishnamurti books, but again, there is two of them. I can't remember. They're two different first names, but they're both called Krishnamurti. But I think I know the one you're talking about. Freedom from Self is one of his books, I think, that I've read. But Krishnamurti, yeah, that sounds like a pretty deep dinner. I don't know if there'll be a lot of eating going on. There'll be a lot of conversing, all right. So all these people talking about the meaning of life, and Einstein talking about the photoelectric effect and relativity, and then you're.
Well, I think they've all something in common. They're all looking to answer. They were all looking to answer that question that we all want answers for.
Yeah, definitely. Listen, I'll say goodbye to you offline, but for all the listeners, that's all we got for today. I'm definitely going to try and get Patrick back on. to talk more about sports performance and breathing, because I know a lot of the listeners here will be a little more into that. But I want to talk more about what we did today. So just for all the listeners, you are spoilt. But until next time, peace.